Chapter 1. Baghdad Sunset. The heat in Baghdad hit like a furnace door swinging open, even at 1900 hours. Sergeant Rex Waller crouched behind the shell of a burned-out sedan, his rifle trained on the third-floor window of the apartment complex across the street. Beside him, Corporal James Beard adjusted his night vision scope, sweat dripping down his temple despite the cooling evening air. Movement, second window from the left, Beard whispered. Rex had been doing this for 12 years, 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq. At 41, he was one of the oldest non-commissioned officers still running tactical operations. Most guys his age had moved to training or desk jobs. But Rex was good at what he did, and what he did was bring people home alive. Tonight's package was Dr. Muhammad Woods, a civilian contractor who'd been grabbed by a local militia 4 days ago. Intelligence said he was being held in this building with minimal security. The militia wanted ransom. Rex's team wanted the doctor back before someone decided he was worth more dead than alive. Command, this is Waller. We have eyes on the target building. Requesting final clearance for extraction. Static crackled in his earpiece. Then Captain Lloyd Wolf's voice came through. Waller, hold position. I need you on a priority channel. Switching to private. Rex frowned. Nothing about that sounded routine. He signaled Beard to maintain overwatch and moved behind the sedan's engine block. Go ahead, Captain. Rex. Wolf's voice carried a weight that made Rex's stomach clench. The captain never used first names on mission. I'm patching through a call from Community General in Tennessee. It's about your daughter. The world tilted sideways. Rex pressed his back against the hot metal of the car. Ella? What happened? She's in ICU, Rex. Internal bleeding, fractured skull, broken ribs. She's stable but critical. Rex's hands were shaking. Ella was 14. Just 14. Last time they'd video called, 2 weeks ago, she'd been excited about making the volleyball team. She'd laughed when Rex told her his terrible dad jokes. She'd said she loved him. How? The word came out like gravel. Her mother's husband, Ramiro Donaldson. Witnesses say he used a baseball bat. Neighbors called it in when they heard her screaming. Police arrested him on scene. Rex couldn't breathe. The Baghdad heat was suffocating now, pressing down on his chest like a physical weight. Why? Why would he? According to the responding officers, Wolf's voice was tight with anger. Ella called him by his first name instead of Dad. He didn't like that. For a moment, Rex saw red. Pure, blinding red. His fingers tightened on his rifle until his knuckles went white. Then training kicked in. Emotion was the enemy. Emotion got you killed. He forced himself to breathe, to think. I need transport. Now. C-130 is fueled and waiting at the airfield. Team is being reassigned for the extraction. Lieutenant Blake will take point. You get your ass on that plane, Sergeant. That's an order. Rex was already moving, signaling his team with quick hand gestures. Mission abort. Emergency extraction. Beard's eyes widened, but he didn't question it. You didn't question that look on a man's face. The ride to the airfield took 17 minutes that felt like hours. Rex sat in the back of the Humvee, his mind racing through calculations. Flight time to Germany for refueling, then straight to Tennessee. 18 hours minimum. 18 hours while his little girl lay in a hospital bed, broken. He pulled out his phone, found the last photo Ella had sent him. She was grinning at the camera, holding up a trophy from her volleyball tournament. Her braces caught the light. She looked so happy. Rex had joined the army at 19, young and stupid and looking for purpose. He'd found it. He'd also found Jennifer Peck, a nurse at the base hospital. They'd married too fast, had Ella too young, and divorced when Ella was 6. The marriage couldn't survive the deployments, the distance, the strain of military life. Jennifer had gotten custody. Rex was deployed too often to be a primary parent. He'd accepted it because he loved Ella more than his pride. He paid support, called when he could, spent every leave with his daughter. They'd made it work. Then 2 years ago, Jennifer had married Ramiro Donaldson. Rex had met him once, briefly, when picking up Ella for Christmas leave. Ramiro was 45, a regional manager for some insurance company. He'd given Rex a firm handshake and said all the right things about taking care of Jennifer and Ella. Something about him had set Rex's teeth on edge. The way he'd stood too close to Jennifer, the possessive hand on her shoulder, the too wide smile that didn't reach his eyes. But Jennifer had seemed happy, and Ella hadn't complained. So Rex had kept his mouth shut. He'd been wrong to do that. As the C-130's engines roared to life on the tarmac, Rex made a silent promise to his daughter and to himself. He was going to Tennessee. He was going to make sure Ella survived and healed. And then he was going to settle accounts with Ramiro Donaldson in a way the man would never forget. The cargo plane lifted into the Iraqi night sky, carrying Rex toward a different kind of war. Chapter 2. Homecoming. Community General Hospital smelled like antiseptic and desperation. Rex walked through the automatic doors at 0600 local time, still wearing his combat fatigues, his duffel bag slung over one shoulder. He hadn't slept on the flight, hadn't eaten, couldn't. The ICU was on the 4th floor. A nurse at the station looked up as he approached, her expression softening when she saw his uniform and the look on his face. "I'm here to see Ella Waller," he said. "I'm her father." "Mr. Waller." "Yes, we've been expecting you." She stood, gesturing down the hallway. "She's in room 412. Dr. Pearson is with her now. I'll let him know you're here." Rex moved like he was on patrol, each step measured and controlled. Through the window of room 412, he could see machines, tubes, monitors. And in the center of it all, a small figure in the bed. Ella looked so tiny hooked up to all those machines. Her face was swollen, bruised purple and black. Her right arm was in a cast. Bandages wrapped around her head. A ventilator tube helped her breathe. Rex's hand found the doorframe, gripping it hard enough that his fingers went numb. This wasn't supposed to happen. He'd spent 12 years in war zones protecting people, and he couldn't protect his own daughter from a monster in her own home. "Sergeant Waller?" Rex turned to find a doctor in his 50s, with gray hair and tired eyes. The name tag read Dr. Ernest Pearson. "How is she?" Dr. Pearson gestured to a small consultation room nearby. Rex followed, his eyes never leaving Ella's room. "Your daughter has a skull fracture, grade 3 liver laceration, for broken ribs, and extensive soft tissue damage," Dr. Pearson said without preamble. "The most critical injury is the subdural hematoma, bleeding between her skull and brain. We performed emergency surgery to relieve the pressure. She's stable now, but the next 48 hours are crucial." "Will she recover?" "Physically, yes. With time and therapy. Mentally." Dr. Pearson's jaw tightened. "I've been practicing medicine for 27 years, Sergeant. I've seen a lot of abuse cases. This was one of the worst. The pattern of injuries suggests prolonged, sustained violence. Your daughter was beaten for several minutes." Rex's vision tunneled. "Where's her mother?" "Mrs. Donaldson is in the family waiting room. She's been here since yesterday." Rex found Jennifer in a small room at the end of the hallway, sitting alone on a vinyl couch, staring at nothing. She looked up when he entered, and her face crumpled. "Rex," she whispered. He'd loved this woman once. They'd built a life together, however briefly. Now, looking at her, he felt only cold fury. How long has he been hitting her? Jennifer flinched like he'd struck her. "He hasn't. This was the first." "Don't." Rex's voice was flat, dead. "Don't lie to me." "Not now." Jennifer's hands twisted in her lap. She'd aged since he'd last seen her, new lines around her eyes, gray threading through her blonde hair. "I didn't know. I swear to God. Rex, I didn't know. If I had, you didn't want to know." Rex sat down, but not next to her. Across the room, maintaining distance. "Tell me what happened." She took a shaking breath. "Ramiro's been stressed lately. Work pressure," he said. "He's been drinking more, getting angry over small things. But he was always good to Ella. Or I thought he was. Yesterday, I was at work. Evening shift. Ella was supposed to do her homework. Ramiro came home and asked her something, I don't know what. She called him Ramiro instead of Dad, and he just..." Jennifer's voice broke. The neighbors called 911. Mrs. Josephine Buchanan from next door, she heard Ella screaming. She pounded on the door, and when Ramiro answered, she saw Ella on the floor. Ramiro had the baseball bat in his hands. He just stood there, like he didn't understand what he'd done. "Where is he now?" "County jail. Arrested for felony child abuse. The DA says." She couldn't finish. Rex stood. He needed to move, needed to do something. "I'm staying here until she wakes up. Then I'm getting her out of your house." "Rex, please. You married him. You brought him into her life. You're her mother, and you didn't protect her." Rex's words were surgical, precise. "I'm not blaming you for what he did, but I am holding you accountable for what you didn't see." He walked out before she could respond, back to Ella's room. He pulled a chair close to her bedside, took her uninjured hand gently in his, and sat down to wait. Chapter 3. The Investigation. Ella woke up 3 days later. Her first word, whispered through cracked lips, was Daddy. Rex was there. He'd barely left her side except for brief trips to the cafeteria or the hotel room he'd rented down the street. He squeezed her hand gently, careful of the foreline. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe now." Her eyes, glassy with pain medication, focused on him. Ramiro, he was so angry. Don't think about him. Just focus on getting better. Over the next week, as Ella's condition stabilized and improved, Rex began to piece together the full picture. He talked to neighbors, to Ella's friends, to her teachers. What emerged was a pattern that made his blood boil. Mrs. Buchanan, the 68-year-old neighbor who'd called 911, invited Rex over for coffee. Her living room was full of family photos and smelled like lavender. "That man," she said, her hands trembling as she poured Rex's cup, "he changed after they got married. At first, he was all charm. Helped carry my groceries, fixed Jennifer's fence. But then," she set down the pot. "I'd hear him yelling. Not every day, but enough. Jennifer would make excuses. Oh, he's just stressed from work. The past 6 months, it got worse. Did you see him hurt Ella before? Not hurt exactly, but I'd see her flinch when he raised his voice. Last month, she came over asking to use my phone. Said hers was taken away as punishment. She had a bruise on her wrist." Mrs. Buchanan's eyes filled with tears. I asked if she was okay. She said she was fine, just clumsy. I should have pushed harder. Rex also spoke with Ella's volleyball coach, Kathy Russell. She met him at the school gym, her face drawn with worry. "Ella's a good kid," Coach Russell said. "Smart, athletic, kind to her teammates. But about 3 months ago, her performance dropped. She started missing practices, making excuses. I noticed she wore long sleeves, even on hot days." "Did you report it?" I asked her if everything was okay at home. She said yes. I suggested she could talk to the school counselor if she needed to. She said she didn't. Coach Russell's jaw clenched. "I followed protocol, but I wish I'd done more. If I had pressed." "He was good at hiding it," Rex said. "And good at making her hide it too." That evening, Rex visited the county jail. It took some string pulling. A call to Captain Wolf, who called a colonel, who called the sheriff, but Rex got his 15-minute visit with Ramiro Donaldson. Ramiro looked smaller than Rex remembered. He'd lost weight in the week since his arrest, his insurance salesman polish dulled by the orange jumpsuit and the fear in his eyes. When he saw Rex walk into the visitation room, he went pale. Rex sat down across the plexiglass barrier, picked up the phone. Waited. Ramiro finally grabbed his phone. "I'm sorry," he blurted out immediately. "I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. I just..." "Save it for your lawyer." Rex's voice was conversational, almost pleasant. That made it worse. "I'm not here to listen to excuses. It was an accident. She pushed my buttons, and I just snapped. I never meant. You grabbed a baseball bat. Aluminum, 28 ounces. You chased my 14-year-old daughter through the house. You hit her 7 times. Once in the head, 3 times in the torso, 3 times on her arms when she tried to protect herself." Rex leaned forward. "That's not a snap. That's a choice. 7 choices." Ramiro's hands shook. "The DA offered me a plea deal. Aggravated assault, 10 years with possibility of parole and 5. My lawyer says." "Here's what's going to happen," Rex interrupted. "You're going to prison. Maybe for 5 years, maybe for 20. And every single day you're in there, you're going to wonder when I'm coming for you. Because I am coming, Ramiro. Maybe not today, maybe not next year. But one day, when you least expect it, I'm going to balance the scales." "You're threatening me?" "I could tell the guards." Rex smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Who said anything about a threat? I'm just telling you how it is. See, I've spent 12 years learning very specific skills. How to track people. How to find them wherever they hide. How to make them understand what they've done." He stood up. "Enjoy your plea deal. Enjoy your prison cell. But know this, you don't get to hurt my daughter and walk away. Not ever." He hung up the phone and walked out, leaving Ramiro pale and shaking behind the glass. Back at his hotel room, Rex opened his laptop and started digging deeper into Ramiro Donaldson's life. Military intelligence had taught him how to research, how to find patterns, how to uncover secrets people wanted buried. Ramiro's social media presence was carefully curated, photos of him and Jennifer smiling at restaurants, on vacation at the beach. Photos with Ella that now made Rex's skin crawl, Ramiro's arm around her shoulder too tight, her smile not quite reaching her eyes in the recent ones. But social media was the surface. Rex dug deeper. He found Ramiro's employment records for different insurance companies in 10 years. Always lateral moves, never promotions. He found court records, 2 DUIs from before he married Jennifer, both pleaded down. A sealed juvenile record that Rex couldn't crack, but its existence was telling. He found an ex-girlfriend, Rose McLaughlin, who'd filed a restraining order against Ramiro 8 years ago. The order had expired, and Rose had moved to Florida. Rex found her number, called her. "Who is this?" Rose answered, suspicious. "My name is Rex Waller. I need to ask you about Ramiro Donaldson." A long pause. "Why?" "Because he put my daughter in the ICU, and I need to know who I'm dealing with." Rose's breath caught. "God, I'm so sorry. Is she alive?" "She'll survive. Tell me about him." "We dated for 2 years. At first, he was great. Romantic, attentive. Then he started getting possessive. Checking my phone, demanding to know where I was every minute. If I talked to another man, even a coworker, he'd explode. He never hit me, but he'd punch walls, throw things. He choked me once during an argument. That's when I left and got the restraining order." "Did he violate it?" "No. He moved to Tennessee a month later. I thought I was free of him." Rose's voice dropped. "Is your daughter going to be okay?" "Eventually. Thank you for talking to me." "Wait. If you're planning something, be careful. Ramiro's good at playing the victim. He'll charm people, make them feel sorry for him. He'll twist everything to make you look like the bad guy. I'll keep that in mind." Rex hung up and added Rose's information to his growing file. Ramiro Donaldson was a pattern abuser, a man who craved control and lashed out when he didn't get it. He was also a coward, someone who targeted people smaller and weaker than himself. Rex stared at Ramiro's photo on his laptop screen. The man was smiling at a company picnic, holding a beer, looking like any other middle-aged suburbanite. But Rex knew the truth now. And the truth meant Ramiro Donaldson had made the worst mistake of his life when he touched Ella. Rex was going to make sure he understood that. Completely. Chapter 4, Building the Case. 2 weeks after returning stateside, Rex sat across from Salvador Gordon, a hard-eyed defense attorney who'd been recommended by another veteran. Gordon's office was modest but efficient, with law books lining the walls and a desk covered in carefully organized files. "Your daughter's case is solid," Gordon said, reviewing the documents. "Ramiro's lawyer is pushing for the plea deal. 10 years, eligible for parole and 5 with good behavior. The DA is inclined to accept. 5 years isn't enough. I understand your anger, Sergeant. But the reality is, first-time violent offenders often get reduced sentences, especially if they show remorse and their lawyers argue diminished capacity due to stress or alcohol." Rex's jaw tightened. He's not a first-time offender. He has a history. A sealed juvenile record and 2 old DUIs won't impact this case significantly. The restraining order from Florida was never violated, so it shows a pattern but not escalation. Gordon leaned forward. "However, if we can find evidence of prior abuse toward Ella, medical records, witness statements, anything concrete, we can argue for a longer sentence. I'm working on it." Over the next month, while Ella recovered at home under Rex's care in the small apartment he'd rented near the hospital, Rex became a man on a mission. He wasn't just building a legal case. He was building a complete profile. He tracked down Ella's pediatrician, Dr. Brian Wong, who reviewed her medical history going back 2 years. 3 ER visits in 18 months, Dr. Wong said, frowning at the records. Twice 4 falls downstairs, once for a sports injury. I noted in my records that the injuries seemed inconsistent with the explanations, but Mrs. Donaldson was always present, and Ella corroborated the stories. "Did you report suspected abuse?" "I called CPS twice. Both times, they did home visits and found nothing. Ramiro wasn't there during the visits. He was at work. Jennifer seemed fine. Ella seemed fine. CPS closed the cases." Rex added that to his file. The system had failed Ella, but he wouldn't. He also investigated Ramiro's current employer, Midwest Liberty Insurance. Rex called the company, posing as a prospective client, and was eventually transferred to Ramiro's former supervisor, Ted Kinney. "Ramiro?" "Yeah, he worked under me for about 3 years, Kinney said. Good numbers, decent closer. But he had anger management issues. Got into a shouting match with a client once. HR made him take an anger management course. He complied, but everyone could tell it was just for show. Did he ever make threats? Not exactly threats, but he had this way of intimidating people. He'd get in your space, raise his voice just enough to make you uncomfortable. A couple of female employees complained about him being too aggressive during disagreements. Nothing we could fire him for, but enough that I wasn't sad when he got arrested. Company terminated him immediately after his arrest. More pieces falling into place. Rex also befriended Ramiro's neighbors, not just Mrs. Buchanan, but others on the street. Julius Blake, a contractor who lived 2 doors down, admitted he'd heard arguments coming from the Donaldson house, but had minded his own business. I saw Ramiro outside once, working on his car. I waved hello, he ignored me. Guy had an attitude, you know? Like the world owed him something. The more Rex learned, the more he understood the kind of man Ramiro was. Insecure, controlling, violent when he felt disrespected. He was the type of man who needed to dominate others to feel powerful. And when he couldn't dominate them, he hurt them. But Rex also discovered something else. Ramiro had debts. Gambling debts. It took some digging through financial records, legally obtained through Ella's custody case, as Jennifer's finances were now under scrutiny, but Rex found it. Ramiro had been gambling online, sports betting primarily. He'd lost over $40,000 in the past year. He'd taken out payday loans to cover losses. He'd maxed out credit cards. That stress Jennifer had mentioned? It wasn't just work. Ramiro was drowning financially, and he'd been taking it out on his family. Rex shared everything with Gordon, who built it into a victim impact statement for Ella. Rex also prepared Ella for what would come next: the trial, the testimony, the inevitable attempt by Ramiro's defense to paint her as a difficult teenager who'd provoked him. I don't want to see him, Ella said one evening. She was sitting on the couch in their small apartment, her injuries mostly healed but the emotional scars still raw. The thought of being in the same room. You don't have to testify in person, Rex assured her. We can arrange for video testimony. But Ella, I need you to be honest about everything. Even the stuff that happened before. I know it's hard. Ella looked at her hands. He started getting mean about a year ago. Little things at first, criticizing my grades, my friends, how I dressed. Mom would tell me he was just trying to help, that he cared about me. But it didn't feel like caring. When did it get physical? 6 months ago. I talked back to him about something stupid. I don't even remember what. He grabbed my arm so hard it left bruises. Told me I needed to learn respect. Mom saw the bruises, but Ramiro said I was exaggerating, that he barely touched me. She believed him. Ella's voice cracked. She chose him over me. Rex pulled his daughter into a gentle hug, mindful of her still healing ribs. I'm not going to let that happen again. You're with me now, and you're safe. What happens after the trial? He'll go to prison, but then what? He gets out eventually. Rex met her eyes. Then I'll make sure he never bothers you again. Dad, don't do something that'll get you in trouble. I need you here, not in prison. I'll be here, Rex promised. But trust me, Ramiro Donaldson is going to understand exactly what he's done, and he's going to pay for it in ways a prison sentence can't touch. Chapter 5, Pressure Points. The trial date was set for 3 months out. Ramiro's lawyer, a slick defense attorney named Buddy Bird, tried every delay tactic in the book, but the judge, a no-nonsense woman named Violet Meade, wasn't having it. Mr. Bird, your client is charged with felony child abuse. The victim deserves a swift resolution. Trial begins May 15th. I suggest you prepare. In the meantime, Rex wasn't idle. He'd learned something crucial during his investigation. Ramiro's gambling debts weren't just to online casinos. He owed money to a local bookie named Simon Sanders, who operated out of a pool hall on the south side of town. Rex walked into the pool hall on a Thursday afternoon. It was dimly lit, smelling of stale beer and cigarette smoke. A handful of men played pool or sat at the bar. Rex approached the bartender, a heavy-set man with tattoos covering both arms. I'm looking for Simon Sanders. The bartender sized him up. Who's asking? Someone who has information about one of his debtors. The bartender made a call, spoke quietly, then gestured to a back room. 5 minutes. Simon Sanders was a wiry man in his 50s, with sharp eyes and a calculating expression. He sat behind a desk in a cramped office, smoking a cigarette. You got 2 minutes to tell me why I shouldn't have you thrown out. Ramiro Donaldson owes you money. How much? Simon's eyes narrowed. That's none of your business. It is when I'm offering to pay his debt. That got Simon's attention. You're not a cop. Cops don't offer to pay gambling debts. So who are you? Someone with a personal grudge against Ramiro. I'll pay what he owes, $22,000, according to my calculations. In exchange, I want you to send him a message. What kind of message? The kind that makes him understand he's not safe anywhere. Not in prison, not out of it. The kind that keeps him looking over his shoulder for the rest of his life. Simon leaned back, studying Rex. You military? Was. Still am, technically. On extended leave. You know what you're asking could get me in trouble. I know you're a businessman, Mr. Sanders. I'm offering you a clean resolution to a bad debt, plus a bonus for your time and discretion. Rex pulled out an envelope, placed it on the desk. 30,000 cash. 22 covers the debt. 8 is yours. All I ask is that you make it very clear to Ramiro that his debt has been bought by someone who isn't as patient as you are. Simon opened the envelope, counted the bills. He looked at Rex for a long moment, then nodded. Consider it done. But I don't want to know what else you're planning. You won't. Rex left the pool hall and made his next move. He'd learned that Ramiro's mother, Margaret Humphrey, lived in a nursing home about an hour away. She was 78, suffering from dementia, and Ramiro had been her primary caretaker before his arrest. Rex visited her on a Saturday. The nursing home was clean but depressing, full of elderly people who stared at television screens with blank expressions. Margaret was in her room, looking out the window. Mrs. Humphrey? My name is Rex. I'm a friend of your son, Ramiro. Margaret turned, her eyes vague. Ramiro? Is he coming to visit? He hasn't been here in so long. He's been busy, Mrs. Humphrey. But he asked me to check on you. Make sure you're okay. Such a good boy, my Ramiro. Always took care of me after his father died. She smiled. Did he tell you about his father? Terrible man. Used to beat Ramiro when he was little. Beat me too. I stayed because I didn't know what else to do. Rex sat down, every instinct screaming that he'd just found the key. Ramiro must have had a hard childhood. Oh yes. His father demanded perfection. If Ramiro got less than perfect grades, there'd be a beating. If he talked back, there'd be a beating. Poor boy tried so hard to please him, but it was never enough. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. I tried to protect him, but I was weak. So weak. Mrs. Humphrey, do you think your husband's behavior affected Ramiro? Made him angry. Oh, I'm sure it did. Ramiro has such a temper sometimes. Just like his father. I told him he needed to control it, but... She trailed off, confused. Where's Ramiro? Why hasn't he visited? Rex left the nursing home with a heavy feeling in his chest. Ramiro had been abused as a child, and the cycle had continued. It didn't excuse what he'd done to Ella. Nothing could, but it explained the pattern. Rex shared this information with Gordon, who could use it to anticipate the defense's strategy. Bird would absolutely argue that Ramiro was a victim of childhood trauma, that he'd acted out of learned behavior, that he deserved treatment rather than harsh punishment. Rex didn't care about Ramiro's trauma. Plenty of people survived abuse and didn't become abusers themselves. Ramiro had made a choice when he picked up that baseball bat. Now Rex was going to make sure he faced consequences for that choice. Chapter 6. The Trial. The courtroom was packed when the trial began. Media coverage had been intense. Iraq War veteran's daughter beaten by stepfather, made for compelling headlines. Rex sat in the front row, wearing his dress uniform, his medals on display. It was a calculated choice. He wanted the jury to see him as a soldier, a father, a man who'd served his country while his daughter was being abused at home. Ramiro sat at the defense table, wearing a suit and a remorseful expression. His lawyer had cleaned him up, coached him on body language. But Rex could see the fear in Ramiro's eyes every time he glanced at Rex. The prosecution's case was devastating. They presented medical evidence of Ella's injuries, photos that made several jurors wince. They called Mrs. Buchanan, who testified about hearing Ella's screams. They called the responding officers, who described finding Ramiro standing over Ella with the bat. Then Ella testified via video link. Rex watched his daughter's face on the screen, saw her struggling to hold it together as she described that night. She was strong, so much stronger than she should have had to be. He told me I was disrespectful, Ella said, her voice small but steady. I called him Ramiro instead of Dad, and he said I needed to learn my place. He went to the garage and came back with the bat. I tried to run, but he was so fast. He hit me, and I thought I was going to die. Did your stepfather ever hurt you before that night? The prosecutor asked. Yes. He'd grab me hard enough to leave bruises. Once he shoved me into a wall. He said if I told anyone, it would be worse. I was scared of him. Buddy Bird cross-examined, trying to poke holes in Ella's testimony. Isn't it true, Miss Waller, that you were struggling in school? That you'd been defiant toward your mother and Mr. Donaldson? I was struggling because I was scared all the time, Ella shot back. I couldn't focus on school when I was wondering if he'd hurt me again. Bird tried a different angle. Your father, Sergeant Waller, wasn't around much during your childhood, was he? Due to his military service? Objection, the prosecutor called. Relevance. I'm establishing the family dynamic, Your Honor. Judge Meade frowned. I'll allow it, but tread carefully, Mr. Bird. My dad was deployed a lot, Ella said, her voice firm. But he called me every week. He sent letters. He loved me. Ramiro lived in the same house and made me feel like I was nothing. That exchange visibly affected the jury. Bird retreated. The defense's case was built on exactly what Rex had anticipated, Ramiro as a victim of circumstance. They called a psychologist who testified about the cycle of abuse, about how Ramiro's childhood trauma had affected his behavior. They called Ramiro's boss at his previous job, who described him as a dedicated employee under significant stress. Then Ramiro took the stand. It was a risky move, but Bird clearly thought Ramiro's remorse would sway the jury. I never meant to hurt Ella, Ramiro said, his voice breaking. I love her like she was my own daughter. That night, I'd been drinking. I'd had a terrible day at work. I lost control, and I'm so sorry. I know I need help, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get it. On cross-examination, the prosecutor destroyed him. Mr. Donaldson, you said you love Ella like a daughter. Is that why you chased her through the house with a bat? I wasn't thinking clearly. You weren't thinking clearly 7 separate times? Once for each blow? I blacked out. You blacked out, but you remember going to the garage to get the bat? You remember what she said to provoke you? Ramiro floundered. The more he talked, the worse it got. By the end, even his own lawyer looked defeated. Closing arguments were powerful. The prosecutor painted Ramiro as a dangerous man who'd targeted a helpless child. Gordon had coached them well, and the prosecutor used every piece of evidence Rex had gathered to build a picture of a pattern abuser who'd escalated to near murder. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, Ramiro's face was pale. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. On the charge of aggravated child abuse, we find the defendant guilty. Rex closed his eyes briefly, relief flooding through him. Not satisfaction, not yet, but relief that justice was being served. At sentencing 2 weeks later, Judge Meade listened to the victim impact statements, Ella's video testimony, Rex's written statement, even Mrs. Buchanan's plea for the maximum sentence. Mr. Donaldson, Judge Meade said, her voice cold, you were entrusted with the care of a child. You betrayed that trust in the worst possible way. Your history of violence, your pattern of abuse, and the severity of your crime demand significant punishment. I hereby sentence you to 20 years in the Tennessee State Penitentiary, with no possibility of parole for 15 years. Ramiro's face crumpled. His lawyer put a hand on his shoulder, but Ramiro shook it off. As the bailiffs led him away, he locked eyes with Rex one last time. Rex stared back, his expression unreadable. 20 years was good. 15 minimum was better. But the sentence was only the beginning. Ramiro had no idea what was coming. Chapter 7. Inside. Ramiro Donaldson discovered very quickly that prison was not kind to child abusers. The news coverage of his case had ensured everyone inside knew exactly what he'd done. On his 3rd day at the Tennessee State Penitentiary, 2 inmates cornered him in the shower. We got a special welcome for baby beaters, one of them said before the first punch landed. Ramiro spent a week in the infirmary. When he got out, he requested protective custody. The warden, a tough-as-nails former Marine named Alejandro Haney, granted it with obvious disgust. You'll be in solitary 23 hours a day, Warden Haney told him. 1 hour for exercise in a separate yard. No contact with general population. Congratulations, Donaldson. You just signed up for 15 years of hell. Meanwhile, Rex was building a life for Ella. She was in therapy twice a week, working through the trauma. She'd started sophomore year at a new school, making new friends, slowly rebuilding. Rex had taken an honorable discharge from the Army to stay with her full-time. He found work as a security consultant for a private firm. Good pay, flexible hours, and it kept his skills sharp. But he hadn't forgotten about Ramiro. 6 months after the sentencing, Rex made his first move. He'd learned that Ramiro's mother, Margaret, was declining rapidly. Her dementia had worsened, and the nursing home costs were draining what little savings Ramiro had left. With Ramiro in prison, unable to manage her affairs, the state was preparing to move Margaret to a state-run facility with a terrible reputation. Rex anonymously paid for Margaret to remain in her current, nicer facility. He made sure the payment was structured so that Ramiro would eventually learn someone had taken over his mother's care, but not who. The message was clear: someone outside was watching. Someone who could reach the people Ramiro cared about. Then Rex moved to Phase 2. Through his military contacts, he'd learned that prisons had their own economies, their own hierarchies. He'd also learned that Simon Sanders, the bookie, had connections inside Tennessee State. For another discreet payment, Simon arranged for Ramiro to receive certain considerations. Ramiro's protective custody cell developed a leaky pipe that flooded his floor weekly. His mail was consistently lost. His commissary orders were always missing items. Small things, but constant. A steady drip of discomfort and anxiety. Then Simon arranged for Ramiro to receive a message. It was delivered by a guard who slipped a note under Ramiro's cell door. The note read, "Your mother is comfortable. Your debt is paid. But I haven't forgotten what you took from me. Every day you breathe is a gift I can revoke whenever I choose. Sleep well. R.W." According to Simon's inside contact, Ramiro didn't sleep for 3 days after receiving that note. Chapter 8. The Long Game. 2 years passed. Ella turned 17 and was thriving, captain of her volleyball team, straight as college applications underway. She still had nightmares sometimes, but they were getting rarer. Rex was proud of her resilience. Ramiro, meanwhile, was deteriorating. The isolation, the constant low-level harassment, the knowledge that someone was watching him, it was breaking him down. He'd lost 30 pounds. He'd developed a nervous tic. His lawyer filed appeals that went nowhere. Rex received quarterly updates from his contact inside the prison. Ramiro had tried to make friends with other inmates in protective custody, but Rex's campaign of psychological pressure made him paranoid. He trusted no one. On the second anniversary of Ella's assault, Rex visited the prison. He used his veteran status to get approval for a special visit, presenting it as part of a restorative justice program. Warden Haney, who hated Ramiro, approved it personally. Rex sat across from Ramiro in a private visitation room. Ramiro looked like a ghost, pale, thin, haunted. "Hello, Ramiro." Ramiro stared at him, his hands shaking. "What do you want?" "I wanted to see how you're doing. Make sure my tax dollars are being well spent keeping you here. Did you send that note? Have you been messing with me?" Rex smiled slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Bullshit. The flooded cell, the lost mail, Ramiro leaned forward. "You can't do this. It's harassment. I'll tell the warden." "Tell him what? That you're paranoid? That you think someone is out to get you?" Rex's voice was calm, almost gentle. "Ramiro, you beat my daughter with a baseball bat. You fractured her skull. You nearly killed her. And you thought 20 years in prison would be the end of it. I paid my debt. I'm doing my time. Your debt to society, maybe. Not to me. Not to Ella." Rex stood. "Enjoy the next 13 years, Ramiro. And remember, even after you get out, if you get out, I'll still be here. Still watching. You'll never be free of me." He left Ramiro trembling in the visitation room. Chapter 9. Resolution. Ella graduated high school with honors and got accepted to the University of Tennessee on a volleyball scholarship. On her graduation day, Rex sat in the stands, watching her walk across the stage to receive her diploma. She'd survived. She'd thrived. She'd won. After the ceremony, Ella found him in the parking lot. She hugged him tight. "I'm so proud of you," Rex said. "I couldn't have done it without you, Dad." She pulled back, studying his face. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Did you do something? To Ramiro?" "Mom mentioned he's been having a hard time in prison." Rex had been waiting for this question. He'd promised himself he'd be honest with Ella when she was old enough to understand. "I made sure he understood that what he did has permanent consequences. That he can never escape what he took from you." Ella was quiet for a moment. "Is he suffering?" "Yes." "Good." Her voice was firm, no hesitation. "I know that probably makes me a bad person, but I'm glad he's suffering. He deserves it. It doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you human." Rex touched her shoulder. But you also have to move forward. Don't let him take up space in your head anymore. Live your life. Be happy. That's the best revenge. I am happy because I have you. She smiled. But knowing he's miserable, that's the cherry on top. They drove home together, talking about college, about her future, about all the possibilities ahead of her. Rex had kept his promise. He'd been there for his daughter. He'd protected her. And he'd made sure the man who hurt her would never forget what he'd done. Ramiro Donaldson would spend the next 13 years looking over his shoulder, wondering when the other shoe would drop. And when he finally got out, if he survived that long, he'd step into a world where Rex Waller was still waiting. Some debts could never be fully paid. Some scars never fully healed. But justice, real justice, was patient and thorough and final. Rex had learned that in 12 years of war. Now he'd taught it to the man who dared to hurt his daughter. And that lesson would last the rest of Ramiro Donaldson's life. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.